we always like to create through lines for our guests. And so I figured I'd just make sure there was a connection there before we started, before I brought it up. And then, yeah, but otherwise, what we do over here is, a lot of the outlets, they tend to give a lot of the shine to the Power Four programs. And there's a lot of schools, not only within Division One, but Division Two, Division Three, the NAI, and the JUCO. Jimmy and I are both junior college All-Americans, myself in cross country, him in wrestling. And so over the course of the last 2 years, we've decided that we want to talk to people and coaches that are running programs that are doing great things. And we know, as going through the recruiting process way back in the day, there's a lot of things that parents, coaches, athletic directors, guidance counselors don't know about what's out there. And so we've committed to, if you're a committed student athlete and you want to go to the next level, there's a program out there where we can find a place for you to fit in. And so we know you're doing great things. We know the University of Chicago is very prestigious. When I was in high school, our salutatorian went there. And then when I was coaching track and field, we had an athlete who was a valedictorian that went there. So I've known about the university and its high regard. And I think sometimes too, the Division III schools, people think, oh, it's Division III, it's Division III athletics, but they don't understand like the high academic standard that exists throughout the Division III landscape. There's a lot of Ivy League type schools that exist in the Division III. And I think navigating that world of academics and athletics is something that a lot of people are interested in, and doesn't necessarily come with the high pressure of scholarships and NILs and that sort of stuff. So we want to hear all about the university and hear about your what you got going on and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and especially, highlighting non-Division One. I do think that it's super important to do that, just because there's such a concept that it's D1 or bust, and the reality is that we can provide a great experience to our athletes. I say all the time, if your goal is to become the best athlete you can be, D3 by and large will get you there, because it is much tougher. I think you're right. It's a matching game to provide the best, match for a student athlete's goals. And we're not the best match for a lot of kids. We do have high rigor and high goals on the wrestling side. But, I was I'm late to the game in D3 because I was a D1 guy. I wrestled at Stanford and had a great experience there, had a lot of success, and then internationally. But I do think that my experiences in D1 and now, my respect and enjoyment in D3 gives me a great, background to provide good information to the athletes. Hey, these are the choices. And I try and tell them that it's a matching game and I want them to make the best choice for them. And here's my view of the trade-offs you're going to make. If you choose D1, here's a trade-off you're going to make in terms of your professional career. And here's the trade-offs you're going to make if you go the Division III route, and how we conduct our off season. And so I try and be pretty upfront about that and give my perspective, and hopefully kids choose us, and we're honest about what we can offer and what we can't, and with the whole goal of becoming a nationally competitive and national championship program. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's kind of my perspective. And not to say that there aren't programs in both Division One and Division III level that do a great job. There are, and just I truly believe we're one of them.
Yeah, we're excited to get into that. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. That's what we do over here. We are in it, ladies and gentlemen. Howdy and aloha. Welcome back to another episode of Airey Bros Radio. We are here and you are there, and we greatly appreciate you tuning in. We're stepping back on the mat today, and we're going belly to belly with a man who's seen it at the world stage and is now building special things in the Division III at the University of Chicago. He's an NCAA champion, a two-time Olympian, NWCA Rookie Coach of the Year, and he's just getting started at the University of Chicago. You all know the drill, why we're here. We're doing this for our younger versions of ourselves, and for athletes, families, and coaches that are still looking for the right fit at the next level. We're here to find a place for you. If you're searching for elite academics and a program that wrestles for titles, don't sleep on the University of Chicago. Before we get rolling, y'all know the drill. Hammer that like button. Drop us a comment. Every review and share helps grow and get back to the sports we love. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. As always, this episode is fueled by Black Sheep Endurance Coaching. Let's go belly to belly with Coach Matt Gentry. Coach, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you with us this afternoon. We do greatly appreciate your time. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Before we get into it, anywhere you would like the athletes, the recruits, parents, coaches to know where they can find you, find the program on social media. I know it's getting late into the summer here. You're probably done with any camps or anything, but anything you would like to promote, the floor is yours.
You know, honestly, on Twitter, X, we're at UFC Wrestling. On Instagram, UChicago Wrestling. That's probably the best way to follow us on our socials. And then, my email is mattgentry@uchicago.edu. My cell phone's up on the website. So for anybody, I'll give them one barrier there. They got to look it up to text me. But honestly, email and cell phone or athletics website talks a lot about our program. So, those are the best ways to track us down.
Awesome. And we are excited to get into the program. As I mentioned before we logged on, we like to present through lines to our guests, but also to show our fans and connect and make the world a little bit smaller. University of Chicago is world renowned. You have students from all over the globe, but with on your roster, you have a very diverse roster. We are originally from New Jersey. You have 4 athletes, I believe, on your roster from New Jersey. One of them is from Howell High School. And I asked you if you interact with the coaches at all, and you mentioned that you spoke and were in contact with Coach Jason Nace. Well, way back when in 1991 and 1992, Jason Nace and I were high school teammates.
Oh, wow. That is a small world.
So we go way back. We actually have had him on as a guest. And then also the head wrestling coach at Howell High School is a gentleman by the name of John Gagliano. And Coach Gagliano was actually my coach, one of my coaches, my senior year in high school. So just making the world a little bit smaller around these parts. And we do know Howell High School is very close to where we grew up. And Coach Nace is not only a friend of the podcast, but he was a great mentor and teammate of mine way back when in the early 90s.
Yeah, the higher you go in wrestling, the smaller that world gets. And
Yep.
so it is exciting to make those connections. And you talked about Xavier. We're excited about getting him on campus in a couple months.
Yeah, it's cool to see again some of these Division III programs that have a great academic standing, that they have very diverse rosters where they get kids coming in from all over the country. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that. They think, oh, it's a smaller school, it's in a certain part of the country, it's going to be a very regionalized roster. But what we're finding out the more and more with the coaches that we interview in the Division III, because of that academic standing, you got kids coming from East Coast, West Coast, Colorado, wherever you name it. They're seeking out not only great programs, but that high academic caliber, school to because they're looking not only at their career as an athlete, but they're looking beyond that, as you mentioned, looking down the road and what that university can do for their career path.
Yeah, I mean, on our roster, we have this last season I think we covered all the corners. So we had a Florida, the furthest northeast, I think, might have been Massachusetts, New York, and then a Washington State, California. So, everywhere. That's awesome. And everywhere in between.
Coach, Rich mentioned, and congratulations, you got Rookie Coach of the Year, but I believe you're in your 3rd or 4th year, correct?
Yeah, so I've been a part of the program for going on. This will be my 4th season next year. The first 2 years, I was an assistant with the head coach, Leo Coker, who retired after 45 years as the head coach at UChicago. And then I just finished my 1st year as the head coach.
So being a national champ at Stanford and being someone, Stanford's not necessarily known for wrestling, but you were able to make the most of it, academics and wrestling. And University of Chicago, obviously everyone knows Chicago. Everyone knows it's one of the top cities in the country, but not necessarily known for wrestling. Do you feel like this is a perfect fit for you?
I do think so. I think that there's a lot of things that are setting us up for future success. The professionalization of D1 has made, I think, has made us able, it's kind of moved to a transaction. This is my opinion. It's moved a little bit away from a relationship-based sport and programs to more transaction-based. And, I think that D3 is going to be offering a better overall experience to a lot of student athletes. Obviously not, the Jacks Forrest and Bo Bassett's of the world, but for the average athlete, if your goal is to become the best wrestler you can be, D3 is good enough to get you there. And we're going to provide a great experience and also balance and maximize your academic pursuits, so you set yourself up for a lifetime of success. So, one, I think it's just the changing landscape of D1. I do think that my experiences in, just competing at a very high level is attractive to a lot of recruits. To Jason Surtsis is our full-time assistant in the program. He was an NCAA champ in D1 at Northwestern, and a three-time All-American, finished his career at Arizona State, and he's had a lot of success. And so we try and provide a really high caliber training environment, competitive environment for our team and expectations. So the regions realigned. We are at, we moved to, I think we're going to be at like somewhere between 125 and 130 programs in Division III. So they're moving, they expanded the NCAA field. So it was up from 18 athletes per weight to 21. So, all these things are helping us, setting us up for, success. And we have had strong success. Coach Coker had, over 30 All-Americans, a two-time NCAA champ. And so I think the blueprint is there. We've had that success in the past, so I know we can have it again as the future. And, just moving from an individual-based success to a team-based success. I think that's the next step. This year we had John Conway, who's unseeded 141 pounder, made the national finals for us, the first in 33 years. And so I think, getting him in the right mindset to really perform with a smile on his face, he really outperformed his season by making the national finals. And so I think that's, just signs that, what we're trying to do is working, and hopefully we just continue to build on that momentum.
So you mentioned the legendary coach that you took over for, how he had a really good foundation for you. What were you looking to kind of add to the program, or hey, we need to get better here, we need to get better there, and where do you see yourself as far as your goals when you took the program over?
I guess I'll answer the second part first. The goals would be just to, I was always in my own athletic career, I always set the next goal, and in the back of my head. So in other words, when I was 8 years old, I didn't want to become like an Olympic champion. I wanted to become the best. I wanted to take the next step as quickly as possible and really focus on that mini step. I do, and I think it's because the path is always clear, right? It's not vague what people want to do. They want to win, right? How you do that is different, and what you focus on is different. You don't get to focus on winning. I do think that winning is a byproduct. So for like ultimate goal would be to win a national team championship. But the next step is to have some team success. And not just having one guy place at the national tournament. So if we start, we've never had, I think, more than 4 athletes qualify in 1 year. So I think the next goal is to get 5 athletes to the national tournament and place in the top 20. Once we're in the top 20 consistently, then the next goal is top 10. Then it's chasing a trophy. And once we can start chasing trophies, then ultimately we got to knock off Wartburg and Augsburg, because they've combined for the last 31 team championships. So those are the goals. In terms of what I wanted to bring, Coach Coker done things for a long time. Anytime I think there's a change, there's just new energy. and anywhere, I think, John Smith is a legendary coach, but there's just a ton of energy nationally around Okie State with David Taylor coming in. And obviously he's a great hire and a great fit and had a lot of success, and understands the Penn State model. So, trying to replicate that. And I kind of think something similar. Coach Coker was an incredible coach and had a lot of success. And with this new energy, we just want to capitalize on it in terms of recruiting and fundraising and competitive opportunities for our team. And, bringing in Jason Surtis, huge, because he brings that competitive fire. And so just setting a high standard in our room for guys to work really hard. I think that's actually the biggest opportunity for us in terms of what we can change. I've talked to recruits about it. Our practice habits can improve. And so, bringing in the right kind of kids that want to train, that love wrestling, that honestly, that's the number one prerequisite, especially in Division III. You got to love wrestling because we are non-scholarship, and those intrinsic motivation is super important to have. And sometimes it's asking a kid, like, why do you like wrestling? What makes you do it? Because there's going to be a day mid-season when you're cutting weight and we have a morning lift and it's snowing outside and you got a midterm later and, your favorite NFL team lost or what in the playoffs the night before. And like, if you don't know why you're waking up and doing something really hard, which is University of Chicago education and the sport of wrestling at the same time, you're going to coast through a practice, and that's a wasted practice. And so trying to create an environment that makes kids want to wrestle, that's, I think, is really my job, is to create a really good environment for them to want to be there. But ultimately, they're the ones that got to do it.
Coach, talking about creating that environment, you're a Stanford alum, so you know all about the rigors of high academic standard while being a high-level athlete. Has that helped with the student athletes at the University of Chicago with what they're, even in the recruiting process, letting them know what they're getting themselves into? I'm imagining from a recruiting perspective, there's a very narrow focus of athletes that you're recruiting just based on the academic standards to get in. But even though whether it's athletics or academics, sometimes there's just those levels that are jumped where, sometimes you're in the room, you might not get a takedown for a few months. And I would imagine academically that might be the same thing too, where you might be getting your butt kicked a little bit that first semester, not realizing what the heck's going on.
Yeah, it is. And, I'll talk to, the kids that actually are kind of set up for failure from the academic side are these kids that go to like a really good prep schools that think, I went to one of the top prep schools in the country in the Northeast, and they think they're going to walk in and just dominate. And, then they realize, oh, I have to work hard. And it is, there's high caliber students from all over the world who had great backgrounds, whether it was a prep school one or not. And so I think the kids that are aware and respectful of the challenge ahead tend to do okay. It's just a lot of it's, it's like wrestling. You stepped on the mat against a kid you thought you were going to dominate, and then it's 0-0 after 2 minutes and they felt pretty strong. Then you have to change your mindset in the middle of the match. It's a little bit harder than if I got to bring my A game. I'm mentally prepared to bring it. It's easier to prepare for that match. But, I talk to recruits all the time. I think the academic side of things is it's the perfect school for a wrestler mentality, because it is hard and our sport is hard. And, most people understand that a good practice partner that takes you down a lot and a hard coach and tough competition really helps you get better. If you tech every opponent you wrestle, it's going to be hard to improve. And so it's no different in the academic side of things. When you're challenged, when you're pushed, when you get a little uncomfortable, have a little stress, that's going to push you to improve. And the big difference is that there was times when I worked really, really hard and I didn't get rewarded on the athletic side. And, our academic side, when you get pushed and you commit to the academic side at UChicago, we have a 97% graduation rate. I'm tracking it within our program. We have a 100% job placement rate of our wrestlers. And so, it's almost a guarantee to get rewarded for the work you do. And our guys are going on doing incredible things and lots of professional success. They're having good experiences. They're giving back to the local community, the UChicago community, the wrestling community. And so that's really fulfilling to see as a coach. And then just to answer your question, like, I think it just gives me, I work pretty hard at building relationships with my athletes so that then they can trust me. But when being a national champ and going to Stanford, kind of it helps me build that relationship, because when I say something, I have more credibility. And so, yes, it absolutely is helpful. And there's times when I give them slack, and there's other times when I don't. And I think, what, if you want this, you're going to make it work. And, I know I'm rambling, but I describe it like, if you miss practice if you text me at whatever Monday and say, hey, I'm going to come on Tuesday, I have a midterm that ends at 6, practice starts at 5. I talked to Johnny and he's going to come in late with me and we'll stay late. And, can you help put me through some drills that I miss? I'll say, great, no problem. That's an academic and an athletic conflict that is fair and there's no issue. But if you text me on Tuesday afternoon saying, I got to skip practice today because I have a paper due at midnight and I got to get it done, that's a conflict that probably was avoidable. When you watch the Bears game on Sunday night, you're not skipping practice on Tuesday to finish your paper. You're skipping practice because you watched the Bears game on Sunday instead of doing your paper when you should have. And most kids, some kids never have a problem with making that sacrifice of having the self-discipline to make the right choices. But lots of people drop the ball. Your 4-year career, it's not going to be perfect. And so giving the guys grace, hey, this is a mistake. And we don't want to repeat mistakes. We got to learn from this. And what are we going to do? So we're not making these same mistakes over and over again. It is important. And our guys do a great job. So, trying to hold them accountable, but then providing a clear communication and expectations of them. This is what is expected of you. And with what's expected of you, and what's expected of you on the academic side, there shouldn't be a conflict. And if there is, you can communicate that ahead of time, and we'll work out a resolution. So I don't know. Is that kind of answer those questions?
Absolutely. I was thinking as you're talking that, a lot of times coming out of high school, you're the best guy in the room. You might be the only state level caliber athlete, and then you get to college and then everyone in the room is a state caliber athlete. I imagine for some it's probably the same academically, where you might be the valedictorian or the salutatorian, and then you get into a classroom at the University of Chicago and everyone in that classroom is possibly a valedictorian or salutatorian as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the same thing.
It is. I talked a little bit about the kids that are overconfident, but I would say that's actually probably less common than the kids that have imposter syndrome, which is they feel like admissions makes a mistake. But, my time, 100% of our team has above a 3.0, and which is incredible. And, our team GPA average for the spring term was 3.7. Wow. We had 9 academic All-Americans. I mean, I would say admissions does not make many mistakes. And they provide us a lot of support in terms of who we want, but not a lot of, there's not a ton, they don't lower their standards for us, because their job is so hard, 4% admit rate, right?
Wow.
And so they have to turn away thousands and thousands of applicants that would do just fine academically. And so our support helps. If you're qualified, if they deem that you're gonna do okay, then our support helps you become part of the 4%. But if they determine like, hey, this kid's gonna struggle here, they're not gonna do well, they won't admit them. And that's, I'm okay with that. So, but I try and tell these guys, hey, you have the tools. The team is a great resource. We have free academic tutoring in any subject to every student at Chicago. And our team doesn't even use it because they use each other. They're a really tight-knit group. And so we got a math guy, there's a CS guy, there's a writing guy in the team, that the team, they tend to use each other more than they use the free resources. They study together. And so I think that culture, which Coach Coker had really created, is helpful. And the other thing I'll tell recruits that are expressed, like, you should be a little nervous, but student athletes at Chicago have a higher GPA than non-student athletes as a cohort, one cohort compared to the other, which is, incredible.
Yeah.
So it can be done.
Curious, you mentioned that 4% acceptance rate. What is the undergrad population? How many students is there?
I think it's like just under 7,000, and really,
Okay.
I think it's closer to 5% than 4%.
Okay.
I don't know the exact stat. I think it's actually closer to 5 than 4. But
And I would imagine with the alumni base that not only the wrestling team has, but also from the university itself, that 100% job placement after graduation makes it pretty easy. Is a lot of that coming just through wrestling alumni, or is that campus-wide sort of stuff?
I would say right now it's mostly the team uses the resources that are available to them from the university.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is to create our wrestling alumni network really strong to where they go there first. And it's building. And a lot of people want to hire a UChicago wrestler, because they've really, choosing a school like Chicago and a sport like wrestling, these guys have proven that they can grind and work. One of our guys is doing a quant-based trading internship. It's like a finance, it's like a math-based, it's a niche field in trading finance. And he went through 12 rounds of interviews to get that, which is,
it's insane.
Another one of our guys did a different quant base, but he made 60 grand in the summer. So these guys are competing at a very high I know, it's incredible. These guys are competing at a very high level. 12 rounds of interviews is incredible. And that's a lot of energy. He's got to work on athletics, his athletic commitments, his academic commitments, and he's going through his job hunt. And that's a lot of energy. And so my goal is that instead of 12 rounds of interviews, he has 4, and he gets to cut the line, because now he's going to be a resource for the next guy that wants quant. And he can say, hey, you're going to skip the first, well, I don't know, maybe not first 8 rounds of interviews, but at least save him some energy. And that saved energy then puts back into the wrestling program. So that's, it's a work in progress, but I think some schools have done a really good job at that. And so just trying to model it, after them.
Talk about imposter syndrome. I have imposter syndrome just talking about a summer job where you make 60 grand.
But I know, it's incredible.
Mentioning that job placement, mentioning how much that athlete is making in a summer job, I think those are things that recruits need to know about Division I versus Division III, right? Like, oh, we might not be able to give scholarship, but this is what you're going to get. And also, grant and aid, we know Division III does that. I think kids think because they're getting $2,000 from a Division I school that they're getting money, but you're really not getting money, right? You're still gonna pay. Like, unless Rich and I talk about it all the time, unless you're one of these NIL guys who are top of the top, the 1%, you're gonna have to pay. You're gonna have to take a loan out at some point. Do you have to have conversations with kids, or kids that are coming to your doorstep, to come to the University of Chicago? They're in it for the long run. They're in it for that job, like that athlete you just mentioned.
Yeah, good question. And I don't handle a lot of financial. I'll have a beginning conversation, and then I hand them off, and they work directly with admissions in the financial aid department. And it's because we are non-scholarship, and so I don't have a big role in the finances, because that's all their individual situation. But kind of my initial conversation always revolves around the fact that UChicago has 100% need-based match. And what that means is that whatever aid you qualify for, the university will cover. So you will not graduate with any student debt. And so I've been trying to track down the exact stats on this. Somebody in the department had told me this a while ago, and I haven't been able to verify it, but it's something like 90% of our student body graduates with zero debt, which, for a school that costs 80 grand is incredible.
Yeah.
And if your parents can afford to pay, then you're gonna pay. But if they can't, you're not gonna pay. So, and once the university decides that they want you to be part of the community, that you bring something of value to the community, then they don't want financials to be the reason you choose differently. But even school, we end up by being cheaper than schools that cost much less, because if you qualify for a fair amount of aid, you're going to go to a cheaper school and take out loans, or you're going to come to us and not take out loans. And so, that is a huge blessing and, a huge advantage in the recruiting, in the recruiting space, especially against other D3 schools. So we're pretty fortunate in that. And, admissions has told me, like, tell anybody that makes less than $300,000 a year to fill out our financial aid calculator, and depending on their assets and, whether they own the business or workers or whatever, all these other, how much of the house they own. I don't even know if house is a part of it, but whatever their individual circumstances are. I would say 90% of my conversations, the parents say, we filled out the online calculator, and the number expected was better than we expected. And so that's probably 9 out of 10 families will say that to me. And so and then they'll say, so we want to continue the conversation of recruiting. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we've heard anything like that, Rich, all the colleges we've spoken to.
No, not at all.
Coach,
so most Ivies offer that 100% need-based match.
Okay.
And so the reason I know so much about this is because I went to Stanford on a partial scholarship. I graduated with student loans, and then a couple years later they switched. So I wanted to fire off an email saying, like, hey, let's make this retroactive. I'm debt free now, so happy about that.
Well, congratulations. Coach, what are some of the main majors that kids are coming to the University of Chicago for?
Having the Booth School of Business, Graduate School of Business, being one of the best business schools in the country or world. We do have a very strong business econ. I would say probably 40% of our team are business econ majors, guys that want to get into varying fields of finance or private equity or wealth management or trading or whatnot. So I would say that's pretty big. We have a number of pre-med guys in the team. We've got some like CS data science guys. We've got a couple of molecular engineers. That's the new engineering department at Chicago. And so, but it's pretty varied. So a healthy mix of majors.
Are you all on semesters, trimesters? How's it work there for you guys?
Yeah, so it's essentially trimester. It's the quarter system. So,
Okay.
And it's both, I would say, a blessing and a curse, because our first day of classes is not till September 29th. And so, it's something that I tell our recruits, we're pretty upfront with, is like, we don't, D3 rules don't allow us to have practices before school starts. And so we won't start practicing until September 29th. And then, the competition starts November 1st. That's not enough time to get in shape for wrestling. And so we're looking at changing our preseason. We actually are looking at changing our preseason scheduling, just so that then we can accommodate that, give our guys a little extra time to work their way into shape, prevent injury. But a lot of it depends on how they come back to campus and, trying to remind them of their goals right now in the summer so that then they continue to work hard. And, I'm pretty pleased from what I've heard of the team in terms of their off-season work. But the advantage, I think, is because it's a long season, October 10th to the middle of March. And so I do think that we're able to maintain a little bit more freshness at the end of the year just because we did get a little bit later start. We were forced to.
Being it's such a long season, one of the topics of discussion that comes up often is some sort of realignment of making it a once semester sport. And then also because of the academics first semester for incoming people, they think that if they didn't have to necessarily worry about that competition aspect of it too, it might ease that first semester for new students. What are your thoughts on maybe a one semester or some sort of modified spring semester competitions?
Man, I've thought of this a lot. I thought about this a lot, and I don't know if I have a good answer. I think there's pros and cons. There's a lot of research out there that student athletes get better GPAs in season than out of season. That's like a very well-known, well-researched fact. And so I think that keeping them involved in the sport is probably better. Over two, for us, Sean Conway made the national finals, and a week later, because we're on the quarter system, was able to study abroad in Greece. And that's a guy that he is maximized, academic All-American. He's crushing it in the classroom, had a great internship this summer, national finals in wrestling. And he's also having the ability to study abroad. Those opportunities would somewhat diminish if, because he's, it's the postseason. So for us, I kind of like the current schedule being on the quarter system. For a semester school, I think it kind of makes sense to move it later. But then for us, we're really kind of in season for all three terms, because the season would start at the end of the fall. Competition would be winter and spring for us. Whereas right now, we basically have all spring term as a postseason, and guys can really they can take an extra class. They can, study abroad if they wanted to. They can take advantage of that other aspects of the college experience that, I'm not referring to partying, but,
Sure.
just like,
being a student.
And Division III prides itself on being the student emphasis of student athlete division.
Yeah.
So,
Coach, when it comes to training, having such a high academic load at the University of Chicago, you mentioned that athlete who made the finals was kind of maxed out on the academic side of things. You also gave an example before of someone having to come later into practice because they had a midterm. When it comes to training, is it one size fits all, or are you very dynamic as far as each individual when they can practice? Hey, you got a lot going on in school. You might not be burnt out on the wrestling side of things, but we need to ease back here. All right, come to practice here. How's that look?
I'll tell a story. I went to a good academic school. I remember like working hard in the classroom and having to go to practice when I was like pretty tired, from working hard. And, it's tiring. Finals week is a hard week, but it was my first year. I remember we finished up final exams in December, and then we had like 10 days of training, and it was like another team the next week from the finals week. And then the next week, no classes, they're just training, and the amount of work and energy they had, we just got a lot more out of them. And so I'm learning as a coach, this is really my first time running a team, right? I've been an assistant helping, but structuring the team workouts is a totally different, and I spent a lot of time doing individual private lessons, helping individuals reach their goals. But, looking at the room and saying, hey, where does our team need to move in terms of their physical capacity and their is just a skill that I'm I'm developing. And so understanding that midterm week, we may not get as much out of them on the athletic side because because of that, because they're grinding in the classroom, and that's okay. And so if I can structure that into our training cycle, that our like kind of we try and cycle to where we go medium, hard, light in terms of volume, that we try and cycle that with their academic scholarship, their academic calendar, and it doesn't always work out. That we can try and set everybody up for the most success. I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but kind of, I read a book called The Sports Gene. It was pretty good. I think it's from 2010. I think Epstein wrote it or somebody, but he talks about, I think the Danish had some of the best soccer teams in the world, and they're a really small country. And so how they were competing at the World Cup, they used to have everybody do the same thing. But then they realized that their goalie and their striker and their midfielder don't have the same demands like running, right? The goalie doesn't have to run, striker has to do short sprints, midfielder has to run all the time. And so they started training them a little differently. And so just understanding that some of our guys are super fast twitch, and that when we have an intense practice where they drain the tank, they don't recover the same as a guy that's that slow twitch grinder who can just go all day. And so just kind of trying to set up, making sure that we're staying healthy. And this is, I'm a physical therapist. That's what I did actually after the Olympics, before Coach Coker recruited me back to Chicago. And so kind of using that knowledge to help set up good training cycles and programs that keep us healthy. Number one, maximize our conditioning and technical development. That's a challenge. I think I'm getting better, but I would say that it's imperfect science. So
being a physical therapist and being a wrestling coach, do you feel like sometimes you have to shut off the physical therapist side of you to get some training done and not worry about injury?
Yes. Yeah, I would say yes. Like, oh man, that guy's shoulders are so tight. Like, and we're doing stretched out single finishes, right? Like, this is not good for your shoulders. And we got to work on that. But now is not the time to work on it. We got to get better in this position because you shoot a lot. And so, we have to get better.
So, Coach, you said you were a physical therapist till Coach Conway kind of recruited you back. Conway was the national finalist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Coach Coker recruited you back. Do you have any advice for guys who, might have went to school for one thing, they're in the workforce, but they really miss wrestling and want to get back into wrestling?
I would say, it depends on I would say it depends on your individual situation. Anybody with I would say one of the more gratifying parts of my job is helping young men grow as people and trying to be a good role model. I tell the team all the time, one of my guys that's graduating, he's going to be helping out a high school program next year. And we had a long conversation about it. That he gets to, he's really looking forward to mentoring young people and helping them. And he's got way more life experience than them, which, is granted not a ton more than them, but he's just graduating college. But, just get involved locally wherever you're at. Now, if you want to make it a career, then you got to start setting yourself up for that in terms of certifications, the bronze, copper, bronze, gold, that silver certification that USA Wrestling offers, different things to make yourself a better coach. There's masters in sport administration and all that. So, professionally you can do training, but the sport itself is awesome. And just to develop all those character traits that wrestlers love, right? we're so proud of being gritty and tough and resilient. And, you don't need to be a stud wrestler to get that. You can be a tough kid with a less than 500 record, right? And that's sometimes they're the toughest ones because they're not getting success and they're still coming back for more. And so to mentor a kid like that, just get involved locally first. You do a good job there, get a good reputation, then you move from a high school. There's a lot of D1 coaches that used to be good high school coaches.
Yeah, got all the admiration for those 500 level wrestlers that keep coming back because it's tough to get your face mushed on a regular basis and still keep showing up. And so I have a lot of respect for kids that do that, and even the coaches that work at those younger levels and are doing those sorts of things. Because a lot of times when you're doing that, you're volunteering and you're giving your time and not doing it. And not that we ever get into coaching for the money aspect of it, because it's not necessarily there either.
Yeah, totally. A lot of respect.
Yeah. Coach, I got one last one for you here. Another through line of sorts for you. A friend of the pod and also a former teammate of mine of sorts is Chris Ayers.
Oh, wow. Good man.
Yeah, him and I were on Team New Jersey back in 1993. We weren't high school teammates or anything like that, but then he also was on the show when he was the coach at Princeton. He is also now the Matt Gentry head wrestling coach at Stanford University. What is that like for you as the first person in the history of Stanford wrestling to win a national title, and all that program has been through over the last couple of years, and how they've kind of Coach Ayers and took over and Coach Cole before him and all that stuff, to know that your name is at that title of that coaching position? Did they let you know that was going on, or they ask you about that? How did that all go down, and what's that like for you?
It's a little surreal. I have had a lot of success. I'm extremely grateful for it. At the same time, it's not the reason I did it, right? Like I just wanted to, I love doing it. So one, I love doing it. And two, I just wanted to see how good I could get. So I wanted to get really good all the time. Like I was very hungry for growth. And so that, I didn't get too high in my wins. I didn't get too low in my losses. And I think that helped me succeed. So it feels great, and I joke because normally you get your name on those types of, normally it's not your athletic success that gets you your name on those titles, right?
Yeah.
Normally it's your financial success. So in some ways, that wasn't my case. They, some of the alum that, I had a good personal connection with, they were the ones that endowed that position. And so they asked me if, instead of putting their own names on it, which they could have done, they had the right to do, they chose to put my name on there, which is definitely an honor. And, I was very grateful for that. So, but yeah, Coach Ayers, I just saw him in Fargo. We're supposed to go grab a meal, Matt Gentry and the Matt Gentry head wrestling coach, but ended up by not working out. But I'm sure we're gonna have a phone call here soon just to compare notes. I respect him a lot. I do think that my situation at Chicago is pretty similar to his at Princeton, in terms of non-scholarship and high academics and wanting to grow. And so I'm excited to talk to him, and I think he's doing a great job.
Awesome. When you do talk to him, tell him the Airey Bros said what's up, and tell him it's pork roll, not Taylor ham.
Okay, will do.
Coach, is there anything about the University of Chicago academics, the team, that we didn't talk about that you want the audience to know?
I think that, one is, and credit to Coker. So he recruited me back. I was working full time as a physical therapist, and then he said, "Hey, come help out our program one day a week." That was 4 years ago, and I came in. I felt like a consultant, and I didn't get to know the team really at all. But I went with him to the national championships. I saw how tough D3 wrestling was. Watched the winners celebrate like it meant something to them. And I said, "Wow, this scratches my competitive itches," and it's super motivating to be a part of. But bigger than that was I was around these guys in the team. They were like respectful, thoughtful, smart, ambitious. They were the type of guys that you'd want to be around. and and so credit to Coker on that, the recruiting that kind of a kid. And our team, they spend a lot of time together. They like each other, they live together, they study together, they eat meals together, they vacation together. And I think that aspect is important in the college wrestling experience. And so, I'm proud of them for creating that. That is a little bit more them than me as a coach. I don't force them to spend time together outside the wrestling room, but they choose to. And so, I just want to. That was a big reason I took this job and want to promote it.
Thank you for sharing that. And also, not very often we get someone on here with the credentials that you have, and we barely talk about the wrestling and we talk about the college. So that just lets you know how much you guys have to offer and what you're doing with the program. So thank you for sharing that. Final four, Rich?
Yeah.
Coach, are you a coffee drinker?
Absolutely. Pour over.
Let's go. Our guy. So we're gonna ask how do you brew it and how do you take it?
Actually, we just, my neighbor runs a small coffee roaster. He just shut it down, and so we just are now searching for a new bean. My sister-in-law just got back from Costa Rica. She has a rack. I grew up in a small town. There's a micro roaster in Grants Pass, Oregon. We just ordered some, so we're looking for our new coffee bean. But grind it, and then do the pour over. That's our
Yeah, but
very
Chemex?
specific. What's that?
Do you have a Chemex?
No.
Okay.
I need to look into this.
It's like one of those glass
Pour overs.
pour over.
Yes. Then yes, that's what I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's that new roaster you mentioned? Do you know them? Can you share the name with us? You're going to gatekeep.
Rogue Roaster in Grants Pass, Oregon, and then Monteverde in Costa Rica.
Awesome. Thank you. And so knowing that you're on the high end of the coffee spectrum here, we're going to share another guest of ours. His name is Charles Nick. He is the founder and CEO of a company called Third Wave Water. And so what Third Wave Water is Charles was a NASA scientist and he couldn't figure out why his coffee at home never tasted like the coffee at his coffee shop. So in conversation with his roaster and his coffee shop friend, he found out that most coffee shops have a specific filtration system on their water system, so they get a specific mineral profile. Being a NASA scientist, Charles took that water, dehydrated it, and formulated that mineral profile. So now what Third Wave Water is, it's like a little, almost like a sachet, little packet, and it's got that mineral profile in it, dehydrated. You put that in a gallon of distilled water, and then that gives you the specific mineral profile that the coffee roasters and the baristas use, and that's what you use to brew your coffee with. So then, like when you see those hints of caramel or cherry or peach or whatever it is, that'll help bring out those flavors for you. So
I'm learning something.
Yeah. Coach, do you have any daily practices or rituals you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Matt Gentry?
That's like always changing. I think, my commitment to growth, I'm always fiddling with diet, exercise, sleep, nutrition, supplements and cold plunge, sauna, Wim Hof breathing. Like I try and mess with it all. I don't know. I should do a better job tracking it in terms of like lab work. I have a family history of like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, metabolic disease, cancer, heart disease. Like I got all of it in my family. And I've had a few health things in my life that I've had to deal with. And so, but mostly I just go by how I feel, and I feel great. I wrestle with my guys still, turning 43 here in a few days. And so, most of my feedback I get just like, how do I feel? But yeah, kind of all that.
All right, we get down with that. I'm curious, outside of the room, what's your favorite way to sweat?
I just joined about a year ago. I joined a nationwide fitness group called F3, f3nation.com or .org or something. F3 Nation. It stands for Fitness Fellowship Faith. I love it. It's 5:15 to 6 in the morning. There's a local group that meets like a mile from my house, and so it's free. It's open to anybody. It's not very competitive, but man, and it's peer led. So whoever, it's different every time. Community based, and end with a prayer, and the only piece of equipment is a cinder block, and so you can get a pretty good workout, and that's what I've been doing lately.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah.
Coach, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
I go through phases with all of that. So there's times when I'll read 3 books in 3 months, and then I won't touch a book for 6 months. Right now, I'm actually in a reading phase. I think it's because I'm out of season and like not as exhausted at night. But I'm reading Scarcity Brain. He wrote a book called Comfort Crisis.
Is that Gad Sad?
What's that?
Is that Gad Sad's book?
No, it's Michael Easter.
Okay.
But Comfort Crisis is pretty good. It talks about, when you get yourself out of your comfort zone, that's actually good for you. And that's how like humans basically evolved or were designed. And so we did a workout this year I call it a mini Masogi. Masogi is this like they talk about it in the Comfort Crisis. It's good. Our team did it though. We did an impossible mile. So it's something that's supposed to be really hard, and that if you don't know you can do it, then it gives you confidence all year that you've done it. You're supposed to train for it. We did it in just one day, but then yeah, and then there's another one, Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt. That's a good one. Phone-based Childhood. And then there's one more, and I can't remember, but yeah.
What kind of music does Matt Gentry get down to?
Honestly, like I'm not a huge music lover.
Okay.
It's just my brain. It's just great. Like if I listen to an audio book, I don't remember it. But if I read a book, I do. And so it's just the way my brain wires. But I usually will put on like chill beats. And I like to listen to that if I sit in a sauna or on a drive at night, or anything that like has some tempo, like slow tempo to it.
Well, you are in Chicago. That is the birthplace of house music, so you're in the right place for it. That's for sure. Coach, last one we got for you. It's a lighthearted one to close it out. It could be a food. Now you're in Chicago. Maybe you're a deep dish connoisseur. Maybe there's a special beverage out there you like. Maybe you're a golfer like a lot of the other wrestling coaches we've talked to over the years. Do you have a guilty pleasure?
Probably just food. I love food. Love it.
Okay.
I could eat it, or like good food. I mean, I don't know,
Sweet,
shrimp
savory,
and lobster. I mean, like savory, sweet, all matter. It's all good. Good chocolate. Not a candy guy, but like good chocolate, desserts. Oh yeah, take it every day.
Do you have a favorite deep
Culver's,
dish?
I would say, you know what? If we had to pick one, Culver's ice cream.
Okay. We got a Culver's right down the road from me.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite deep dish place?
Giordano's is the closest
Giordano's?
to campus, so I go there.
Okay.
Good one.
Okay. Curious, we'll have to check back in with you how Xavier likes the transition from New Jersey, New York style pizza to deep dish.
Yeah, that thin crust. I don't know. Those guys, they tend to stay loyal. You know?
Yeah. No doubt.
There's a little bit of trash talking about that.
I would imagine so.
Coach, thank you for this conversation this afternoon. Grew up watching you on the NCAAs, had that tape when you won the NCAA finals, so watch that match repeatedly. So thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed learning about the program and the college and everything you guys got going on. So thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon to chat with the Airey Bros and educate our audience on the University of Chicago.
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me, and thank you again for highlighting non D1 and just showcasing that you can have great experience and get really good as a wrestler, set yourself up for lifetime success, and you don't have to be D1 to do it.
We appreciate your insight on all that, and we will be adding a University of Chicago banner to our wall of support that we throw, and we're looking forward to following you guys this upcoming wrestling season. So, best of luck to you. I know you got some time, unlike some of the schools that are starting a little bit earlier. You got a little over 2 months about. So, enjoy what summer you have and doing summer-like things with the family and all that stuff and recharging their batteries. And yeah, it was an honor and pleasure to chat with you today, Coach.
Yeah, well, thank you again.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's Coach Matt Gentry from the University of Chicago Wrestling Program. Make sure you check all those links in the show notes, give them a follow, throw them your support, let them know the Airey Bros sent you. And we'll be back tomorrow evening with Ken Harden from the University of Auburn. We're going to be talking to the Assistant Track and Field Coach of the Year, Division I, and they are the two-time defending national champs. So we're excited. We'll be going from belly to belly on the